So what would you tell new agents that something you wish you would have known earlier on?
The first thing is that you can hire out a lot of not meaningless, but the mindless tasks that take up a lot of your time. You can hire that out and look to doing that as soon as possible. I would say do your first few deals, your first few transactions on your own, just so that you understand the process, because you can't manage the manager if you don't understand the process. So learn the process and then start hiring out as soon as possible. I probably would have done another 10 deals in my first year if I would have hired out my transaction coordination stuff. And then I would say network, learn as much as you can, and then just find a way, regardless of what it is, find a way to add value. If you add value to someone or to a certain community, then you can become the agent for that community.
So the question is this: how do most agents succeed in today's competitive real estate market when all the successful agents are keeping the secrets to themselves? So that's the question, and this podcast will give you the answer. I interview agents from all over the world. I ask them their tactics, and they share all of their secrets with me so we can give them to the world. I'm Aaron Amuchastegui, and welcome to Real Estate Rockstars. Real Estate Rockstars. This is Aaron Amuchastegui. Today, I get to interview Caleb Drake. Caleb's with the Five Pillars Realty team in the Florida Panhandle. We got to chat for a few seconds already as we're ready to get started, and I'm excited about this interview. Caleb, how's it going?
It's going well. How are you?
I'm doing good. You live in Pensacola. What a beautiful place, right?
Yeah, it's some of the nicest beaches around.
Nicest beaches around. We're going there. We're going to be close by there, Rosemary Beach, for vacation in about a week. We'll be flying in right by you guys and driving around over there. It's an easy flight from Austin, Texas, where I'm at, and it's pretty cool. There's such pretty beaches. I didn't even really know about the Panhandle till last year, but it's not the part of Florida people think about.
No, it's kind of a hidden gem down here. So it's a great short-term rental market as well.
How long have you lived there?
I've been here since 2014. I got here September of 14. I rejoined the military. I got out for a couple of years, went to college, and then came back in with a commission, and been down here ever since.
Right on. So when did you get into real estate?
It was around, I started investing. I bought my first house, and then I started house hacking that property, but then I became an agent in March of 2021.
All right. So when did you buy your first house hack?
I bought my first house. I closed actually January 1st of 2016. And by February, March, I had my first long-term tenant. And then I went through all my training. I was a special operations recon guy, and I flew special operations tactical recon. And so I was deploying 6 months of the year. When that tenant moved out, I turned that house into an Airbnb, and it kind of just been on a growing, scaling cycle since then.
So you were an investor for 4 or 5 years while you would spend half the year out on, flying around doing missions, and then half the year being there. After about 4 or 5 years, you decided you wanted to become an agent. What made you pull the trigger to actually become a licensed agent?
Yeah, so that was actually, it's kind of a bittersweet story. My first house, when I bought it, I'm coming from Indiana. I didn't realize that there was a such thing as wetlands. And the agent that sold me the house kind of knew that there was some issues with it. I had a little bit of proof. I had about $100,000 lawsuit that I was kind of pursuing at that point. Fast forward, I had a new agent. We were looking for new property. And when my house flooded in Hurricane Sally, because of the wetlands behind it that were kind of misled to me, I was like, I'm never going to let that happen to any of my friends. I'm never going to let anybody that I can help have this kind of a problem. And that was my catalyst to get my license. Also, my agent at the time, my new agent, my mentor, Rhonda, she was telling me Caleb, when we were looking at properties, she's like, more about investing, and you're teaching me things on how to build, properties, and you've done your research. You would be a great agent. I'm like, I don't know. I'm full-time military. Maybe I'll get my license and sell to my friends. Buy my own deals, be able to pull the commission to pay the down payment. well, then that's when my house flooded. It was like 2 or 3 months later. And I was like, yeah, I'm doing this. So that was my catalyst.
So when that first one went so wrong and you had to sue the agent, what was the agent thinking? Like, did they make a mistake? Did they know about it? Did they like forget to tell you? Or do you think they withheld, or like, cause that's a really big error. And as an agent, you realize later, like, disclose is the name of the game. And so it's, it shouldn't happen. Right. Or you think it wouldn't. So have you ever like gone back and tried to figure out how did this happen? How did this agent let this happen?
Yeah. And I did. And that was kind of when I started kind of looking at it, that was why I was like, you know what, I think I want to get my license. I think it was a little bit of both, just misleading, kind of assuming that the worst wouldn't happen again, and then just wanting to get the sale, just kind of wanting to get, I was a first time home buyer. I'd looked at a lot of properties. I was probably a needy client, we all have them, and, asking a lot of questions. And it was probably just like finally we found a house, and I had just moved my price point up a little bit. And so we found this house. It was beautiful. I'd never lived in a house that had granite countertops or anything of that sort. And so it was, one of those things was like nice to have this new thing. And so I jumped on the property. They kind of noticed some of the things in the inspection report and like, oh no, this house was in this area flooded in the hurricane or in, the 100-year flood. It won't happen again. And then, fast forward 4 years later, and we had about 6 inches of water in the house.
Did insurance cover you on that?
Yep. Yeah. We had a good insurance, policy. So we had a friend of ours that was a contractor. And so he fixed the property. I actually, 3 months after the house flooded, I got sent to Afghanistan. And so my fiance was here as essentially a single mom and, trying to remodel a house while I was kind of trying to manage it from afar.
Brutal. So it's like in the middle of a insurance claim, new construction flood, living there with a kid running around.
And at the same time, we were building our brand new house that we live in now. So we were doing all of that while I was deployed. Needless to say, it made our relationship, a lot stronger, and we kind of saw what we could endure. So,
yeah, well, bad experiences can go either way. They can make it stronger, or they can, what doesn't kill you makes you stronger, I guess. When I think about what that agent did, it's this good reminder in real estate, especially for newer agents that are out there that are working so hard. And sometimes it's about like that idea of like something bad won't happen again. I think agents need to be careful and remember that like this business is a long-term business, right? And if you treat a client right, they're a client for life. And if you don't, they're not. And then, being short-sighted, right? Thinking about like, I got to get this commission now instead of what's better for my client is such a dangerous thing in real estate. I think it happens. I mean, it definitely happens, but it's just remembering like the short-term win doesn't win in the long run. Mm-hmm. And when there is some risk or like just being honest and communicative, especially with the first time home buyers. And so it sounds like a big mistake that agent made. And, it's always it's definitely bittersweet when you've got an agent that kind of failed, that let you down, that didn't kind of treat you the way that you were hoping, protect the way you were hoping, that pushed you into that. But I recently had a transaction with a new agent that it became so obvious really quick. They were buying a property of ours. They came in over asking cash. It was like a 10-day close. So they were like really, really strong and wanting to do, whatever it took to get it. But I quickly saw that she didn't really have control of her buyer. So I remember her buyer like switching title and escrow companies like 3 days in on a 10-day close. And then they were like, well, we'll pay for title escrow. And I'm like, do you understand that's going to cost you an extra $3,000 for no reason? Right. It's trying to understand. And she's like, well, they're just more comfortable with that. They really want to do that. And it's like, that agent needed to be able to step in. And then, a day later, they asked for like a $40,000 credit on a $260,000 house for really nothing was wrong. Like it was like a $2,000 inspection repair stuff. And it was like, it was just realizing like how unreasonable it was, and us having to realize like, well, that sale and offer was never real. But people also don't understand that a bad agent can make or break you, because we won't accept another offer from that agent, right? Because it was so clear that like that it just wasn't really real. So there's good ones and bad ones. I'm glad that you came in and decided to become a good one. So 2021, you became an agent. You decided to get licensed. What was that first year of real estate like for you?
So ironically, my first sale was, I worked it with my mentor, and I was actually still in Afghanistan. So I closed my first property. It was inside the broker is kind of a pocket listing within the brokerage, and they did the walkthrough for me. My client was actually in Afghanistan with me, and she bought it, and we did all the paperwork, and I handled the whole transaction from overseas.
So did you get her so she was a buyer lead, and like while you're with her in Afghanistan, she said she wanted to buy a house, and is that how you got that lead?
Yeah, so it's a little deeper than that, but it was actually my son's mom. So it was like my ex-wife that we're still really good friends, and she knew I had my license. She's like, hey, and so we had been looking, and then we're like, you know what, like this is the house, and so we're like, well, we don't have to look when we get home. And so, it was kind of an honor to be able to sell her first home. And, now I know that my son, when he's with her, we split 50-50, he's got a great place to live because, we did the work to find it.
So the first transaction was and I think a lot of investors that become agents, the first transaction sometimes is their own, right? So that's kind of like that one. So first transaction's pretty easy, pretty simple lead. It kind of like just fell into place. What about after that? So like you're still in Afghanistan, you do your first sale, you're a licensed agent now.
Yep.
How many deals did you end up doing that next 12 months?
My first 12 months, I did 20 deals. I picked up a decent sized investor who I sold 9 properties to. That first year, I did 11 other deals. And then probably, I think 4 or 5 of those were listings. The rest was mostly buyer stuff. And then it was a lot of my personal sphere. I didn't do any marketing. I didn't really even have a good signature block. It's because I wasn't taking myself seriously. I kind of had imposter syndrome where I was like, well, I'm still active duty military. I can't be this agent, and spend all this time. But it was in the middle of kind of the COVID, everything going on with COVID and work from home. And the military was being very lenient on if you can get your job done from home, do it, please, so that, we don't infect the base. And so I had a lot of free time. And so I took a lot of that free time and I just capitalized on it. I didn't watch Netflix. I ran numbers and we picked up properties.
So how did you get that? So that first investor lead was that Sphere? Like, how did you get that client?
No, it was actually a referral from a friend of mine that's a big investor out of Kentucky now. And Aaron kind of threw it my way. And it was a very this person was just looking for somebody on Facebook, and they were like, hey, I'm looking to grow into the Pensacola market. I started talking to the guy. His name's Tom. He's an amazing investor. He's taught me a ton about, running businesses and investing in properties, running numbers. And I kind of just became his guy because I was so new and I was willing and eager to be that agent that, would keep his business. I didn't have that huge pipeline. I worked my butt off for him, and I still do. And, there was times where he would ask me a question at 10 o'clock at night, and I was available. I didn't have a work-life balance because I was working 2 full-time jobs and then also investing myself. So I was just constantly in the grind. So doing that really helped me to build that reputation, and then learning from him, it kind of just threw me into the mix of being an investor agent. It wasn't necessarily always my I'm going to be an investor agent. It fell into my lap. And then I learned that, what they say, riches are in the niches. And I became that guy here in Pensacola, and I'm trying to grow our team to be, the go-to, hey, we want to invest in Pensacola or the Florida Panhandle. We'll call Caleb at 5 Pillars.
Yeah. So if we want to dissect that for other people, if we want to dissect it for people that are like, hey, essentially they want to get more business. They want to get in and they want to get investor clients. So the first one came to you, so they made a post on Facebook saying, hey, they were looking for an investment. You had a friend that said, hey, go talk to Caleb. So how did that friend know you were in real estate? Like you said, you weren't doing too much marketing, but were you putting it on social media? Hey, I'm doing this, or had you been sharing flips, or how did that person know that you were the go-to when you were so new? Because once you got the lead, it seems like the way to the lesson people would get is if you get the lead and you've got an investor, work your butt off for them, work around the clock to try to give them the info they need. Because if you treat them good once, then they're going to have you do everything. Then you become their go-to. So once you got the lead, it seems like it's a very copyable circumstance there. Like there's a process that other people can follow. But how did people know to find you originally?
Yeah, it was literally a lot of networking and a lot of just telling everyone what you do, right? Like anybody in your personal sphere that that you're talking to, just find a way to bring up that you're in real estate and make it organic, right? Like don't go into the conversation. The first thing is like, hey, how you doing? I'm Caleb. I sell houses. Like that doesn't, that sounds kind of standoffish. It sounds like the first thing you're trying to do is sell them something, and you kind of are. But any conversation you have, just find a way, like, hey, how you been? Oh, I've been great. I'm just really busy. Oh, why? Boom, there's your sales pitch. Or like, hey, I just bought a house. I invest in out of state. Like, hey, I'm investing out of state. Like, oh, cool. What are you doing around here? Well, I got my license. I've been selling to big investor clients, and we've been doing a lot. Oh, and then that transitions to, hey man, I'm thinking about selling my house when my PCS from the military. Can you list it? I'm like, yeah, sure. And then you build your pipeline that way. It's just everything has been talking to people and just building relationships and becoming that trustworthy person. And even telling the story of your failures when you're having these conversations, just makes you approachable and makes you like just being an honest broker of what you can deliver for those people. Just whether it's residential or investors has really just been beneficial to me.
So what sort of networking were you doing? Like, is just going anytime there was a social event, going to that? Was it specific real estate stuff, or, was it military stuff? What sort of, networking were you doing?
A lot of the above. So just trying to get involved with, some of the military investment communities. There's a few out there. There's real estate meetups, mostly in probably every market that people listen to. There's at least one real estate meetup. And if there's not, the best way to generate leads is to create one. Be the face of the investor community, and you'll pull a lot of clients and a lot of leads that way.
All right. So you started going on, so you're going to networking, you're starting conversation with how are you doing? I've been busy. People ask you why. Now they know you're in real estate. And just by getting that out there, you're able to like let your sphere know. You got that one lead that turned into 9. And then I'm sure, or however many you did with that investor. And then that ends up starting to snowball how did you end up getting your first listing?
First listing was a friend of mine, Personal Sphere did it at a pretty good discount for them to kind of learn. They knew that it was a neighbor of mine. So they kind of knew that I was pretty new to real estate. So they were trustworthy. We kind of bonded over the mutual hatred of our homeowners association. Mm-hmm. They were actually moving out of the neighborhood because of the homeowners association. And so I was the kind of the face of the resistance because I was renting my house out as a short-term rental. So there was a lot of contention there. So they were like, hey, we went out of here. Like, we trust you. That it was kind of the height of a lot of the political stuff going on and the COVID stuff. And they were like, you're kind of a like-minded individual with us. Our last agent was not. She's posting a lot of crazy stuff on Facebook. We want to just move on from that. And so I listed that house and did very well. Listed my house across the street pretty soon after that. Neighbors in the neighborhood started seeing that. So I listed another house in the neighborhood, and then a neighbor down the road that actually I'd never met just stopped me when I was mowing my lawn and said, hey, I've got a friend that is looking to sell her house. You selling this one, right? I said, yeah. And so we started talking, and then he referred me out. And so I listed that one. And so I listed 4 houses within, probably a 2 to 3 month period there with just no advertising, just word of mouth, and just kind of just being the guy in the neighborhood that was doing everyone a good job. Neighbors talk. If you're not a good agent, like, they're not going to use you. Like, oh, how was it? Well, he did it. It's okay. Or like, how was it? Well, we got 5 offers and negotiated them, and we got $20,000 above asking.
Do you do any like CRM work or follow up with previous clients and stuff so they don't forget about you?
I do now. So that was first year rookie Caleb. That was imposter syndrome Caleb. That was at a small brokerage with paper files and doing everything manually. I didn't have a transaction coordinator. And then I kind of started to see that was going to be very hard to scale. I started to really get a little bit of tailwind behind me with being an agent, an investor agent specifically, I had a few more bigger investors calling me. I had a lot of smaller guys that were just getting kind of word of mouth through the network and the communities that I was in. And then I was like, if I'm going to do this, I need to do it right, because like I can't work, all these things manually. So.
Hey guys, a quick commercial break here, but don't worry, this one is only going to run for the next 2 or 3 episodes. I talk so much about the mastermind. It's one of my passions, getting everybody to come hang out in Austin where I get to meet you guys. Well, we just had it, a few weeks ago, and we decided for next year we were going to do pre-sales. We're only selling 70 tickets total for the whole country, and that way we keep it nice and small where everybody meets everybody, and at the end of it, it's like a big giant family. Well, we put out the pre-sales last week, and during the pre-sales, we sold more than 60 tickets. So there's less than 10 spots left. 10 spots left if you want to join us for the mastermind for next year. We're putting the date so far out there, you've got no excuses to be able to know that the date works. You can put it in your calendar now. And we also set up a payment plan for people to break it up into 4 easy payments. So if you're one of those people that have thought about going to the mastermind, have never pulled the trigger, now's the time. And it's for March for next year. But you got to go sign up now if you want that spot. I don't like selling. I don't like advertising. So we figured we would knock it out quickly. We'd knock it out this first couple weeks in April for next year. So instead of working on that, we're going to focus on value. If you do join the mastermind, you get to be join part of our private Facebook group where we do monthly Zoom calls, where we do tactics. On those calls, they're really small. There's like, between 10 and 20 people on those. So you get to ask lots of questions and learn from experts. So if you are interested in signing up, go to realestaterockstarsnetwork.com/mastermind, realestaterockstarsnetwork.com/mastermind. Go lock in your ticket. We have less than 10 spots left. You can break it up into 4 payments, so that way it is much easier to be sure to join. And I promise you, it is the least expensive mastermind out there for the type of stuff that we're doing. The GoBundance masterminds that I talk about that I'm a part of cost 5 times what we do for this, and I try to deliver twice as much value. All right, back to the podcast.
That was about the time when I reached out to 5 Pillars team with Shelby and Ali Garcet, and I was kind of just looking online. I think I somehow came across Shelby's Bigger Pockets podcast and followed her, and I was like, you know what? Like, they're going nationwide. Like, let me see what this is all about. I knew nothing about EXP or any of the program or any of the systems that the brokerage has, and but I just reached out to Ali and I said, hey, thinking about this, and she put me in contact. And the first thing, they're like, you don't have a transaction coordinator? I'm like, no, what's that? Like, you mean like those files you hate? Like, you could pay someone to do it. It's like, yeah, but I don't want to pay someone $300, or $500 to do this out of my commission. And it was like, just try it, So I did, and I was like, it was eye opening. And when I saw that you could like scale by hiring and scale by, starting to push tasks off onto people that can do them, and really looking at like, cost per hour and what you can start farming out. That's about the time when I stopped cutting my own grass, when I stopped doing my own landscaping, because, if I spend 6 hours on a weekend doing landscaping, I could have sold a house, and that's, $2,000 to $10,000 in commission. So when I started seeing that, and I saw the light at the end of the tunnel, and I knew that I could, create something automated and scale it out. And I'm by no means perfect at any of the automation stuff, but that was when I realized that like I could grow. And in my second year, I did 45 deals, and it was a little over 11 million in volume. And that was still as a part-time agent.
I love the advice they gave you of like, why don't you go ahead and try it? Like, just try having a transaction coordinator once or twice and see how that frees you up, because and we talk about it a lot on here, but agents figuring out the part they love about the transaction, then trying to focus on that. And then trying to have there are people that love paperwork. There are people that love setting up DocuSign and doing a checklist to show that the files are complete. There are people that's their jam. They love doing it. They love, and there are other people that just don't. And it's not only like scaling where it frees you up to do what you like, but there's also less of a chance of an error. When it talks about like agents like that make errors and can screw somebody up, right? If you've got somebody that's like really good at like disclosures and documentation and they love doing it, then you've got a better chance it's all going to go right. So you got to start scaling. So first you did it all by yourself, and you didn't really want to turn it into it. You didn't really want to make it like a business because you had that kind of imposter syndrome. It sounds like the good thing you had that first year was the niche though. Or you wanted to be that investor agent. So when you're talking about that investor agent, Is it all sorts of investments? Do you specialize in helping people buy short-term rentals and flips and long-term rentals? Like what do you think your niche is?
I kind of came into the business with, already having an investor mindset and kind of the knowledge base, whether it was, a grand knowledge base, I still knew numbers and I was still able to do that. So, to answer your question in short form is I just kind of became an investor agent of like residential. At first it was more, like long-term buy and holds. And then once I started working with the investor client that started teaching me things, Tom, he was a big house flipper. And I started kind of learning those numbers. And in the second year was when I really realized that like I could build out a team for investors to use here in the Panhandle. And I could build a process that I saw that I had a void in my investing because I was doing like BRRRR deals in the Midwest. And when I realized that like it's impossible to find a contractor, it's impossible to find cleaners, et cetera, on these deals, that I was like, well, why can't I just create that here? And so I found good relationships with general contractors and subcontractors and roofers. And so I built it's not my team, but it's professionals that are kind of loyal to the system that we've built and will do the rehabs for our clients. And by doing that, that's where I kind of essentially built my niche the second year. And that's where we've kind of scaled from there as far as our team here in the Panhandle is we became the guys that are like, hey, I want to, newer investors or bigger investors that are out of state or locally, but I want to flip a house, but I don't have the team. It's like, oh, I got the GCs, I've got the lenders, I've got the cleaners for when it's over with, I've got the roofer if we need them, and we'll help you manage all of that through our vetted contractors that we use. And I don't use anybody, or I don't recommend anybody that I haven't used at least once myself. And so I'll do a project with a contractor, and then if they do it right, and we'll keep them. And we've had a couple that we've had to kind of transition through contractors just over a couple of deals, but for the most part, we've had really good success with being able to create that team for our clients.
So, what's your current investment strategy or portfolio right now?
Personally, I have 2 short-term rentals in the Florida Panhandle. So we have one in Navarre and we have one in Pensacola. The one in Navarre was our first kind of deal that I did with, I've got a business partner on most of these projects. That the one in Navarre was our first project, and we had it for about 2 years before we decided that we really wanted to scale the business. We saw the potential in short terms and long terms, and so we started buying houses in the Midwest where we went to college. We saw kind of a void in nice rentals there. And so we started trying to buy stuff, clean it up a little bit, and actually get it rentable. So we did that. So right now I have 10 properties that are cash flowing. I've got another one under contract that we should close on next week. And then we've got a remodel going on right now that will get rented out in the next probably 3 weeks. It'll be done. And then we got the 2 short-term rentals, and we're under contract for another property up in on Smith Lake in Alabama. And that property is going to be a value-add short-term rental property as well. We should be able to turn the single cabin that's on the property into about 5 different cash-flowing properties by the time that we're done with it, because it has 600 foot of lake frontage.
Cool. So you're still finding the investments. You're not doing flips right now. You're still finding investments that you can buy they're going to be long-term holds, whether they're regular rentals or short-term rentals.
Yeah. I mean, if I can find something that pencils out as far as a flip, I'm still doing them. But I'm still helping investors down here find fix and flips and a lot of BRRRR deals, the community. So, the buy, remodel, rent, refinance, repeat, BRRRR deal is what we'll call it, but the BRRRR method, we're using that in the Midwest right now. We were planning on flipping up there, but where we invest in Indiana, but the numbers just kind of started changing with the market. And so we just thought, why don't we just hold everything? And if, in 2 years it goes back up, we'll sell it, or we'll just keep it and, let it cash flow. And My goal this year is to pick up 10 cash flowing long-term rentals and 3 to 5 short-term rentals. So we're on pace for the short terms if we create the kind of the fam camp, the glamping sites that we're planning on doing with the property. And then the long-term rentals, we're just going to continue to buy these value add opportunities.
Yeah. So what would you tell new agents that something you wish you would have known earlier on?
The first thing is that you can hire out a lot of the not meaningless, but the kind of the mindless tasks that take up a lot of your time. You can hire that out and look to doing that as soon as possible. I would say do your first few deals, your first few transactions on your own, just so that you understand the process, because you can't manage the manager if you don't understand the process. So learn the process and then start hiring out as soon as possible. I probably would have done another 10 deals in my first year if I would have hired out my transaction coordination stuff. And then I would say network, learn as much as you can, and then just find a way, regardless of what it is, find a way to add value. If you add value to someone or to a certain community, then you can become the agent for that community.
Yeah, I like that. Like become, and that can be like volunteering at a kid's school. There's so many different places, but it's like if you can add value in any community and people know you're the real estate agent, then you become the go-to. Now it's simple when it's like part of an investment community or something else. But I remember even Pat telling me that, when he first started, it was like, he became the guy that after he sold like one police officer, he let everybody know, like, no, I'm the guy that like helps police officers get their house. And it sold to one fireman. Oh yeah. I help firemen buy houses, like, and any like thing out that you're getting yourself in, adding value. And then you can become the agent for that one. You're talking about now you're like, hey, you can hire out some of the other tasks. What are some of the, so you said now, like you pay someone to mow your lawn, you have a transaction coordinator. What are some of the other tasks that you've done to try to scale?
So my transaction coordinator also she does a lot of like virtual administration stuff. So she's doing a lot of just even my investment portfolio, she's doing a lot of the admin work for it. So everything from, keeping the folders up to date so that when we go to buy another property, when the lender wants XYZ, we've got folders for all that stuff we can just pull it from. So I can just email her and say, hey, Amber, will you send out XYZ to David? And she does that. And that's, that took me, a half hour, 45 minutes. She already has the system because she built it. And so she goes in, she can copy and paste all that stuff in, 4 to 5 minutes. And that right there has just been able to, as full-time military, like there's not a lot of time during the day that I can do a lot of this stuff. I can hop on my email, I can make phone calls at lunch, I can hop out if there's nothing going on to, answer a client's questions. But for the most part, being able to just say, in me, I if I don't do something right at that time or I don't write it down, I forget just because I've got 100 things going on at once. Being able to just send a text or a WhatsApp or an email and just say, hey, can you get this done? And then, knowing that one little task is going to be done, whether that's, hey, can you send out the investor intake form to this new lead so that we know exactly what they're looking for so we can get them set up on a search, to, hey, can you send a follow-up email for the title company on, this, or can you figure out where we are in this process? A lot of that stuff that you can do can be done by a virtual assistant or, even just an assistant that you find locally. I call Amber a virtual assistant. She lives 45 minutes from me. So we meet up, probably once a month to talk business stuff, but 90% of the stuff we do is over the internet.
Yeah. So it's virtual, but in person when needed, if needed. So what's next for you? So you're looking at like 2023. What's the market like in Pensacola right now? What are your goals for this year?
My goals this year, so kind of backtracking a little bit, but my last year's goal was to bring 5 agents onto my team here in 5 years. I did 10 in 14 months. And so my goal now is to be able to add the value to those agents that they deserve, right? Not that they necessarily expect, but that they deserve. So being able to create the systems and the back end processes for the team to be able to add that value to those guys so that they want to stay and they want to work with us and they want to be a 5-pillar. So that is kind of the back end side. I'm still probably going to do around 30 deals this year. I'm on track for about 30. The market did slow a little bit. If I tried really, really hard and I didn't focus on the other 3 businesses that I'm trying to build and run, I would probably be able to match that or, even surpass the 45 I did last year. But this year I'm trying to do a lot more referrals and give my team work. I brought them on to 5-Pillars team, and a lot of our agents are part-time that are in my Florida team. And so giving those guys 1 to 2, clients to work a month and then putting those guys under contract is, that's almost more rewarding to me than closing the deal myself, because I get to see some of these newer agents succeed. I get to mentor these guys and I get to really, see their success and then make the reputation for us here.
Yeah. So as you like, if someone wants to be an investor, right? They want to be an investor agent. They want to start learning some of the stuff. What are some of the tools or technologies out there or things that people could start to get themselves familiar with to start to learn some of that analysis, right? You're talking about adding value, but are there any tricks, any software, any websites you like to use?
Yeah, I would say there's a ton of free content out there. By the time I realized this, I was already 2 to 3 years into investing. YouTube University is kind of a cliche word, but it's true. There's a lot of information out there. I will say, don't get sucked into the gurus trying to sell you things. Find a network and an online community that you resonate with, whether, if you're in the military, a community like for Military to Millionaire, or, if you're in something else, if you're in a women's group, like find a women's investing group. And then a lot of those communities will have online training, and in taking some of those classes, I would say invest in yourself before you invest in a property, because I got lucky on my first couple deals because I really didn't know anything. But I just bought right, and we bought at a good time in the market, where right now it's tough to say with the last, 2 to 3 years of run up. So like being smart and investing in yourself, and then, using that technology like you're talking about. But I definitely would find some kind of a mastermind, whether it's a pay to play mastermind that you actually feel like you resonate with, or if it's just free content on YouTube and building that small network of people around you. That would be where I would start.
And then before we started talking, you mentioned like using, Rentometer, to figure out like rental prices for things. Like, what's that website do? Or do you use like AirDNA? Do you use any other analysis for like short-term rentals and things like that?
Yeah. So that's kind of goes back to the adding value piece for your investors and your clients is, I can't tell them necessarily if it's going to make money, but I can tell a client what the data, what the data says, right? It's a data game at that point. So yes, so using Rentometer, as an agent, we all have access to the MLS. Some markets actually put rental properties on the MLS, like the Florida market does. So I can go in and I can pull potential rents for clients on the MLS. I can use Rentometer to get a general idea of what has been both on the MLS and off the MLS, through Zillow, et cetera, and to see what a potential rent would be. And then I can help them pull, using AirDNA. AirDNA is one that I don't use personally, but it's a great product. I use Price Labs. They've got a dynamic pricing tool, but they also, a lot of people don't know, they also have a market analysis tool. And so that's where I kind of get my short-term rental data. And then I use another one called Rever, which is probably not a lot of people have heard of. It's a newer data aggregate, but it's revr.com. And that one is a cheaper option to pull short-term rental data. And I like that. I use it for my own analysis, for my own properties around here and in out of state. And so those would probably be the 3 places I would start, but expect to pay for some of that software, because it's just, everybody's trying to create a product and make the money. So you can also create, or I actually purchased a few different investor spreadsheets online to run analysis for properties, and then have a nice spreadsheet that you can present to a client that says, hey, this is the numbers, these are what we would expect. And just make sure that when you're when you're presenting data to a client that you tell them that like this isn't set in stone, because it can become a liability issue, right? Like, well, you said I could make $2,000 a month. No, I said the data shows if you did this a certain way that you could probably make that much. I have never ran into that problem personally, because most of the people I work with are pretty savvy investors. So they're like, yeah, you know what, the data makes sense, but obviously I can put in the work.
Hey, Real Estate Rockstars, we only have a few minutes left in this episode, but before we get to the grand finale, I just wanted to say, as always, thank you for listening. You know, podcasts are obviously free. You don't have to pay to listen to the podcast, but if you could pay one thing, if I could charge you one thing to listen to this podcast, what I would ask you to do is go, please make a review. Go to wherever you listen to podcasts, whether it's on YouTube or on Apple or Android, wherever you listen to podcasts, and go give me a review of the podcast. I read them, I listen to them, I try to make adjustments. You know, a couple years ago, I had a ton of bad reviews on the sound quality or the number of advertisements, things like that. And I've really tried to dial in to add value for all of you guys. So please go do a review. If you want to get a copy of the toolbox of the stuff that, you know, everybody that comes on the show, they give us some tactics, they give us something that we put in what we call our toolbox. And so to get that, you go to realestaterockstarsnetwork.com. When you get there, click on the toolbox and you get access to the free gift that every person that we interview on the episode provides. There's things like, you know, listing tactics, how to do a presentation, you know, how to do a newsletter, all sorts of cool, fun stuff. And if you want to talk to me, go find me on Instagram at Aaron Amuchastegui. Ask me a question. I talk to so many of you guys on there. All right, back to the show. Thanks again for being a listener.
I mean, it's great. It's great to be able to refer to third-party data and say, hey, this, I mean, that's why people get home inspectors. They're going to say, that's what this person said. Third party, they don't care if this deal goes through or not. They're just giving you what their opinion is. And sometimes it works and sometimes it doesn't, but it's just a data point for that. Did you upload anything for our toolbox for for listeners if they want, you know, for any of your tools?
Yeah, I did. I uploaded my investor intake form, and that investor intake form, and then I think I put in an investor email as well. But the investor intake form is great because when I go into a client conversation with an investor, you know, the first thing they do is they start spouting off what they want, what they think, what they do, all of that, and that's great. But it's really hard to digest that stuff in a 30-minute conversation, and a lot of that I try to maximize my time between the military and selling houses. So I try to plan my intake conversations while I'm driving. So it's really tough, obviously, to write things down. So the first thing I do is I go into those conversations and I let them know, like, hey, I'm going to be sending you an investor intake form. I sent you guys kind of the template that I use, but we actually created a JOT form. And so that JOT form, you go into it electronically and you fill it out, and then it sends me an email with all of your answers. But I go into those conversations and I say, hey, you know, we're gonna send you this form over, get it filled out, and then it'll help guide our conversation when we have it. So most of the time I've already got their information right there, and I already kind of know what they're looking for. And then when I go back to create either an MLS search, or if I'm working with wholesalers to find them a property, whatever it is, I've got that information right there, readily available, you know, in my face. I don't have to go back and look at text messages. I don't have to ask them, hey, did you say you wanted a 10%, you know, cash on cash return on this property? Or, you know, what are your STR numbers? It's all in that form. And I think that works great for especially people that are super busy.
Yeah, I like it. So listeners, if you want to get a hold of that, you go to realestaterockstarsnetwork.com. And in there, we've got a button that says like, get the toolbox or like sign up, and you get access to any of the free gifts that any of the people that we listen to kind of put on there. So if you're interested in trying to figure out what you should email to investors, how you should ask them, I think that's great. So Caleb, a lot of the people that are part of Five Pillars do the Pints and Properties type meetups. Have you tried that out in Pensacola? How's that worked, and what's the formula been?
Yeah, you know, I have, and the formula is already kind of like created. I was really bad about reinventing wheels when I first started. Too stubborn to ask questions, too stubborn to admit that I didn't know. And so I was, you know, creating everything from scratch. Well, when I joined Five Pillars, I realized that was the dumb way of doing things. And Shelby has a system already built for the Pints and Properties. And for those that don't know, Pints and Properties is an investor meetup. The Pints is obviously, you know, beer, and then Properties is self-explanatory. But we do ours at a local brewery here called Doc's Hop Shop. And Doc and the owner, Rob, have been very, very, very kind to let us use their establishment for free. And so we've been doing that. At first, I wasn't really advertising. I wasn't really networking like to the extent that I should have been. And I didn't really see the potential in the Find Some Properties as like a lead generation source. And so we only had probably, 10 to 15 people that were showing up. It was very sporadic. We weren't doing it at the same time each month. And then I kind of took a break and I had to do some self-reflection, and I was working too hard. So I was like, I got to automate a lot of this. I got to, and that's where I started. About that same time was when I started hiring out. Fast forward, we took 6 months off. We started again in January, and we started like really bringing in guest speakers that create a lot of value, really marketing the meetups and kind of having, valuable discussions. And now we're at probably between 40 and 60 on average, people that are coming. And some of those people are professionals within the industry, right? Like I'm never going to tell somebody they can't come to a meetup. Some people are like, well, this was my meetup. I'm an agent. I can't have other agents here. Like, no, you want that, right? You want to network with other agents because those agents are going to have good ideas that you don't. They're going to have good deals that you don't. They're going to, they're going to have those pocket listings that they're going to say, hey, I've got this pocket listing. I'm at this investor meetup. Like, obviously they're going to try to sell it themselves, but I've got buyers that are always looking. I'm talking to every agent I possibly can. Like, do you have anything? And just kind of, creating those relationships. Have the abundance mentality when you're going into those conversations that like everybody can win, and there is competition, but nobody's your like direct competition to that point, because everybody wants to succeed in this business, and working together is the best way to do that.
Yeah. Well, Caleb, this has been great. I think you gave a lot of value to our listeners and gave them some actionable kind of tools and a path to find a niche, kind of the being able to find those repeat investors that add to things. And then, the story at the beginning of the difference between a good agent and a bad agent, and how if it's a good agent, you keep using them, and a bad agent can cost people money and they can cost clients money. And so it's about, doing what you say you're going to do. And just the way that you started from just being like, it's kind of going through the motions and getting some deals done, to starting to scale with getting assistants. And now you're starting to build your teams, and now you're going to start using the CRM and doing some of the follow-ups. It's been this journey as you've started just kind of like to master something and then stack on another layer, and then master something and stack on another layer. Any final thoughts? And then also tell everybody how they can reach out to you if they find you, if they want to know more about some of the tools or the underwriting you're doing. They want to send you some referrals out in Pensacola. What's the best way people can find you?
Yeah, so you guys can find me. I'm pretty active on Instagram at Drake_OH. So Draco. It's kind of a play on my last name is Drake, and then the airplane that I fly, the call sign is Draco. So cool. It's kind of a cool little blend there. Or you can find me at caleb.drake@exprealty.com. And really, my last advice is just to kind of reiterate, like continue to find your avatar, find your client, and really just start automating as much as you can, as early as you can. Don't reinvent the wheel. Everybody has a great system. Not everybody, but there are systems out there that will work for you. Just kind of, capitalize on what's already built. Yeah.
I like it, man. Well, Caleb, this has been fun. Part of the small 5 Pillars family of a couple of the gals that are a big part of our mastermind. I'm glad I got to meet, Shelby and Allie there. Maybe we'll see you next March there if they can talk you into it. And thanks for coming on the show and providing so much value today for our listeners.
Yeah. Hey, I appreciate it. And I'm going to put it right here and online that I'm going to be there. I'll be at that mastermind. So
awesome. We will see you then. I can't wait. Real Estate Rockstars. Thanks for listening.
Thank you.